All right, nice.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Megawatt Minute. This is a lot of firsts here for us. Our first live, our first guest while we're live, or excuse me, our first guest while we're live. Yeah. So I'm Edward, and I've got John and Steven here. So everybody knows Steven, I think, if you're a regular viewer. But John is our guest. Say hi, John.
Hello.
And you
Yeah,
are
hey
you
Ed,
are
we've
yeah.
got to get a better intro like John's podcast.
Yes.
Like they're killing the intro. Like I thought our intro, I was like, oh, this music's good, and then like their intro is badass. Like everyone is different, John, but
Yeah,
I think you should just do Gloria Estefan for every episode.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, I actually ended up like singing that song to myself for about a week straight after we recorded that.
Yeah.
We were talking right before this and about how Max goes heavy on the editing, and so he's you guys are really good at creative content, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we try. I mean, Max
John
is the
and
creative
Max,
one,
both of you. I don't know
and I
who
kind of
puts it
ride
on.
on
I'm
his
looking forward to
coattails.
talking about that.
Well, John, I wasn't sure which one of you.
Are you willing to
was the
say what
English-
state you're in?
I'm in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania to be specific.
Okay.
We don't really want to associate ourselves
Okay.
with the eastern part of the state. So if we could secede, we would.
Okay. All right. Nice. Go ahead, Stephen. I cut you off.
No, well, I thought we had a lag. I was going to say, John, I wasn't even sure if you were the English or the American that was coming on the podcast. So
That's Max. Max and I got together about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, through a group that he has calls the Meshtadel. I guess we're all kind of in that together, and it's a bunch of like sovereignty plebs. And we were talking about self-sovereignty things, and I was into mining at that time. And I said, hey, what about mining off of a black diesel, or what about solar mining, or what about heat reuse for greenhouses or something like that? And he's like, oh, hey, mate, we've got to talk. He like emailed me instantly, and we did a pod together a while ago, and we just became friends after that. So it's been a good relationship. But the podcast, the Bit by Bit podcast, he's been doing for quite a long time, and the Pleb Miner portion of that is a new addition to his lineup.
Was Meshtadel originally miners then?
Meshtadel was originally just like regenerative agriculture guys and Bitcoin guys, and whatever we can do to be self-sovereign is the idea. And the term Meshtadel comes from mesh networks and citadels. And the idea was created by a guy named Soul Exporter, and he and his son did a nice little recording about it. I'll have to post it on Twitter at some point and tag you guys with it. But the idea is that a citadel against any kind of state attack is probably not going to stand. You know, you'll never have as many resources as a state will. Military, food, people, you name it. But if we're all in a mesh network together in small citadels, and we are able to trade with each other, we're able to share information, we're able to share goods and services, of course, all based on Bitcoin, that we're all more likely to survive a state attack. You know, if you want to be dramatic and call it a state attack, but you know, any kind of threat from the state, or if you just want to be left alone and sovereign, you have people that you can depend on. So that's the basis of the Meshtadel. And mining, of course, is part of that. And we go into that a lot in our discussions in the Meshtadel. It's kind of like a little social group. There might be a podcast of it soon. I don't know, you know. But in our little social group, we talk about all kinds of things. And of course, being able to mine and capture that heat and do different things with it is a big part of it.
And you said there was one recording that was the origin of Meshtadel then?
There was, yeah. It was with Soul Exporter and his son. He's since retired from Twitter, it seems. But I'll post that up because it's really worth a listen. He and his young son go through a bunch of different things.
John, when did you get into Bitcoin and kind of this self-sovereign philosophy? Is it recent, or give
My
me a time frame?
self-sovereign philosophy, it seems to be a long time. You know, when I was a kid, I
Yeah,
was into punk music and anarchy, and then after that, I joined the Marine Corps, which is an interesting turn from being that kind of kid. But I find a lot of people that are in the military, especially Marines, you come out with an edge. You
yeah,
come out with a certain resentment towards authority. You've seen things happen. You've seen a lot of messed up decisions being made by the government. You just have a little bit of an edge to you. So
yeah.
I've always kind of been resistant to authority and an ungovernable misfit, as what
So
you
yeah,
say.
I see on the website, Ungovernable Misfit is I believe there's language that says apolitical. So would you consider yourself a libertarian? Not to, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into politics maybe a little bit,
Sure.
Ed, because I saw we've got some Steven Crowder
I
on the
saw the
agenda.
Steven Crowder thing. Yeah. It's
So,
not going to
and
be any interaction with his wife, is it?
you're right, right, right. We should have his wife on as a guest. But so yeah, but what's funny about that is so I've got a LinkedIn article pulled up. John, I'm big on I'm all in on LinkedIn, man.
I
Okay.
watched the Alana episode. Yeah, I heard. Cool.
I'm all in on LinkedIn, but I got a great post that is gonna piggyback on Steven Crowder's article. I think y'all like.
All right.
But yeah, so would you describe yourself as apolitical or libertarian, or I don't know?
The
You
Ungovernable
too.
Misfits website, it belongs to Max and another guy
Okay.
named Mr. Crown. So like I said, a
Hmm.
lot of that stuff I'm a contributor and I kind of tag along with them on the journey. But
Got it.
I don't know. I guess you could say late 90s, early 2000s. I was just a straight up conservative Republican.
Okay.
That would have been my viewpoint on things. And then as your eyes
Hmm.
get opened up more and more, you see that they're just two sides of the same coin. And the Republicans will go to the anti-abortion lobby and go to the evangelicals and tell them all the things that they want to hear. They'll go to the fiscal conservatives and tell them all the things that they want to hear. But as we know, none of them are Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They're all just
Yep.
corrupt pieces of shit. So
Hmm.
you know that your opinion of Republicans gets tarnished, and you just get a bad taste in your mouth about politics in general. And that's when I see the evolution towards libertarianism. If you want to
Hmm.
label yourself,
Right.
I do kind of like the apolitical label, but in general, in my heart, in my home, we're conservative Christians.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Same here.
I try not to push that outside of my home unless you are coming into my home with your ideology.
Yeah.
I
What do
here
you What do
in
you?
my
Go ahead, Ed.
I think we might have some lag. That's okay. So yeah, here in my state, we are there's a lot of, like you were talking about, the DC, like, you know, the establishment politicians, right? Like I've been this is not this is turning into a political episode, but I've been doing a lot with grassroots movement here and just pushing back against all the establishment, no matter what stripes you are. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that's my goal at the moment, is to kind of help clean house. So yeah, I feel it.
Have you had success in that? And
We have,
what are
yes.
some of the issues that you go after?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's, you know, who is paying for who and who is paying for what, right? Like, and if you can kind of make some connections for people in that regard, then they start to realize, like, oh yeah, this guy got this because, you know, somebody else, you know, paid for it, right? Like, it's not because
Mm.
they're the best. It's not because, you know, whether if they have these positions, right, and then they get in there, and after 8 years, you start to see that these positions get really wavery, and so then they start to figure out, like, oh yeah, what was this all about in the beginning then, you know? And so then
Mm-hmm.
there's potential opportunities there.
It was about getting elected.
Yep, yep, yep.
Do you think anybody
Go
gets
ahead.
into politics? We are talking a little bit about politics, but Ed and I kind of talk about politics before the podcast starts to roll, and then when it starts to roll, we straighten up. But but this is fun. So I'm interested. Well, first of all, I think the Bitcoin is always going to have a layer of politics involved, just because of the philosophy of ultimately of freedom and whatever that, I think you can define that in different ways and what that means to different people. Um, but do you think anyone gets into politics? Like, is everyone corrupted by power once they get into politics? Like,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
that the
sure, they
absolute
have
power
good
corrupts
intent.
absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any good politicians out there? Let's say on a federal level, on a local level. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I actually know just people of mine who have got into local politics that I think have good intentions and are trying to do good things. But on a federal level, are there any good ones out there?
What did you have to do to get to that federal level? How many how much of your soul did you have to sell? How
Hmm.
many concessions did you have to make in order to get the funding to get onto that federal level? So it's like, I think a lot of Bitcoiners would agree. We like people like Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey,
Right.
kind of the libertarian types. That's who we
Yeah.
like. But even those guys, how did you get into that position?
Hmm.
What did you have to do? Did you have to sell your soul in a way, but not disclose it publicly? And you can still, like Thomas Massey, take your Christmas family picture with all your machine guns, and it, they let you do that part. So no, I don't think on a federal level that there are too many out there that are just in it for the right reasons.
I think at
There,
that. I think
I
you're
just don't
right.
see it.
Go ahead. I think you're right in terms of Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, but I do also wonder how much of it is like everybody kind of has their role to play to create
Mhm.
dissension and keep people at odds because that's how the game continues. So
It's like Max
Yeah,
always
I was
teases
I
me or
was
something.
not a
Go ahead, Steven. Sorry about that.
no. Go ahead, John. Yeah, we've got a lag, but go ahead.
Max kind of teases me all the time. He'll ask me something about American politics, and I'll say, "Oh, I don't trust that guy." The big story about RFK Jr. Okay, well, the guy's been an ultra left wing, uh, social political activist lawyer his entire career. Why does he impress me now? Because he memorized some Bitcoiny things to say. Because he sort of sounds libertarian when he's talking about fighting big pharma. But if he was fighting big energy, if he was down the street lobbying against a nuclear power plant and instead lobbying for all kinds of green energy solutions that are naturally going to raise all of our electricity rates, oh, now all of a sudden Bitcoiners don't think he's so cool anymore.
Hmm.
He just has the right things to say. And so Max will ask me about something like that. He's like, "Well, what do you think about RFK Jr.?" And I said, I think he's a phony. I often say the word controlled opposition. And I think you're right about that. Okay, we're gonna let this guy, be untethered for a little bit. He's not gonna sway anything one way or the other in American politics. Yeah, so go ahead, make some people feel like they actually have a voice in Washington, so you don't get the Bubba effect and then marching up and down the street or doing something violent or irrational. Just let you hold off for a little bit.
Hmm.
I think on the other side, I think Vivek Ramaswamy, or however you say his name, like he seems to be the most like the stuff he's saying is meant to shift the Overton window, right? To say things that will draw a certain crowd, right? But
Mm-hmm.
his chances of winning are obviously next to nothing, and yeah.
Is there anyone in your opinion that could get in and actually make change? Like I remember the big, you know, hope and promise of Trump was drain the swamp.
Yeah,
That was the
lock
big
her up,
thing that
lock her up.
everyone wanted. Yeah, it was drain the swamp. I even remember he was, going to put in term limits
Mm-hmm.
for, all this, but that, none of that ever had a chance. As soon as he got in, he just hired he just brought people into his ecosystem
Yeah.
from the swamp. So is there anybody that you really think, regardless if they have a chance of winning or not, that would get in and actually intend to do that?
Do you guys think? I don't.
I don't think so.
I don't see one. Because the type of people that do want to make that change don't want that lifestyle. They don't want to sell parts of their soul
Right.
to get in there. And you'd almost would have to be like an anti-Manchurian candidate for a long time and say, oh yeah, I'm going to play ball and I'm totally right down the middle and it's cool. And you want me to go to Bohemian Grove with you and do a conscious care ceremony. Yeah, I'm down. I'll do that. And then all of a sudden when they get into power, like, yeah, let's burn it to the ground, really drain the swamp. It just can't. This apparatus is so huge. And my hope is that it will just be crushed under its own weight as all great empires fall. And in my fantasy dream world, we kind of, as a country, let's hold on to the ideals that are within the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And then you on a local level can rebuild that as all of the states secede and come back together. And under, California, you can be California, New York, you can be New York, and Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia will become whatever we are because we're all very much alike.
That's what I was going to ask you when you mentioned the East and West Pennsylvania. Do you pay much attention like what Idaho and Oregon are doing in terms of trying to reconsolidate where the borders are?
Yeah, I know. Weren't there some people in Eastern Washington state that were trying to secede and go into Idaho?
Yeah,
I believe
think it's Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington. Yeah, are trying to become part of Idaho. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck, guys.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's. That was a long intro. Let's dive into our stats, and then we'll come back to stories quick enough, and then we can riff on whatever you guys want to talk about. So, we on our the general format typically is, and we won't spend much time on this, but I would like to hear your take on if you have any thoughts on kind of price trajectory and some people just refuse to predict the price and stuff, but we kind of where do you see us between now and the halving, I guess, is the most pressing question on my mind.
I don't see much movement from now to the halfing, as we call it. And I'm really interested to see how this halving goes. It's going to be a rough 3 months. What are we looking at? May, June, July of next year. How many large miners are going to stay in it to win it for that period of time? I'm just excited to watch on the sidelines, and I think that's something that a lot of pleb miners can do is sort of watch. We didn't borrow a ton of money. We aren't some corporate structured entity that has to make a profit or has to report to somebody or has to go back to the bank or its investors or its board and say, yeah, I know you guys expected us to sell X and that we were supposed to be mining at a hash price of Y, and we're not able to do that. Okay, well, we're going to have to restructure things, liquidate these machines. Let's move this and that around. So it's neat for us from the pleb miner community to kind of watch that on the sidelines. But some pleb miners are also leveraged to a certain degree, and we feel it too. So I have no price predictions. I think we'll kind of probably just stay in the high 20s, low 30s, but I don't know. I've been wrong my entire time,
you and everyone else,
me and everybody else. Yeah. So, all the plan Bs of the world can make their predictions all until they're blue in the face. Rarely are they right. Everything will go up.
Do you think are most of them? Steve and I have talked a lot about supply of miners, and maybe this is like a question for Nick from Kaboom Racks or something, but from your perspective, do you think, $2,000 miners, do you think, is it even feasible to go lower than that in your opinion?
I was talking to Alex Alex from Kaboom Racks
Yeah.
is a good friend of mine, and he's one of the founding members of the Pleb Miner Month community. And we gave away a lot of machines during Pleb Miner Month last September, and we had a conversation about what he thinks is going to happen around the halving. And he had done a little bit of research and determined that machine prices drop, especially the older gen machine prices drop near the halving. And I found that kind of interesting. So if that's the case and you have some liquidity, it might be interesting to watch the machine prices. But some of these new gen machines, the efficiency on them, some of these XPs, you're getting 21 joules per terahash.
Yep.
It's really becoming, it's tempting me. Some of these newer gen machines, even with the M50 plus that they released at Bitcoin Miami. I don't remember what the efficiency of that was, 25 or 24, which is great for a What's miner.
Well, that's what, if you look at the ASIC price index here, and there was a significant drop, and I wonder if it did have anything to do with announcements at the Bitcoin conference, maybe. But
a significant drop for the previous gen machines.
No, the newest.
Oh, I haven't looked at price. I usually do that right the day before we record Pleb Miner Monthly. I tabulate everything.
So this is under 25 joules per terahash, was at $23 and dropped to 21 some dollars. So
yeah, I mean, just based on supply and demand principles, I don't see how these machines go. I don't see how they go up. I mean, I don't see how they go up. And I'm with you, John, and I've been saying this to Ed, and I'm not a analytical nerd, and I'm not on Glassnode, like looking at the 4-year cycles from the last 12 years or whatnot. I mean, I understand at a high level those cycles and what went down, but for some reason, I just think this one's going to be totally different than the past 3. And I'm with you. I think this price is just I think it's gonna maintain in around where we're at through the halvening, and it is going to put a hurting on people, and it's just going to continue to consolidate the industry on a large level. I mean, the big players like Marathon and Riot are going to survive. I do think the Riots, though, are I mean, they're going to there's going to be some liquidity crunch on some of these even on the big miners, but they're going to survive. But I don't know if that's how I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a bloodbath around the halvening, and I'll be sitting there just kind of watching and seeing what happens. But yeah, I don't.
I'll have to get another bit of moonshine for the months around the halvening.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that, and I don't see the price. I don't see the prices moving. I mean, I just, how could they? And
I more say that because I'm just a pessimist on things.
I
think the longer you mine, the more pessimistic you become.
How long have you mined, John?
Well, I started mining on my wife's computer in 2012.
Holy shit.
But that was only for a few months, and I didn't pay much attention to it. And like a lot of people have a similar story, just kind of let things go. And I don't know if I ever hit a block during that time. No idea. And then everybody has this same. I'll make this quick because everybody kind of has the same story. 2017. Oh, hey, Bitcoin's back, and look at all these things that's happening, and all these people are becoming very rich. Doing this stuff. So I got back into it, and at that time, Bitcoin and shitcoins and all that business in 2017. And I'm a technical guy by trade. I'm in telecom construction. And I've been that's what I did in the Marine Corps. I fixed electronics. So that's how I like to participate in it. I'm not a wallet guy. I'm not a privacy guy. I like to work with my hands. That's what I do for a living. So I thought my participation in Bitcoin is going to be mining. So like a lot of other people, I started out with an S9. It was like late 2018, 2019. Started out with an S9 in my garage. just collected more and more. I ended up with 6 down there before the China exodus in 2021. And I said, okay, well, now is a good time to acquire more machines. And once I did that, then I really got into the home heating aspect of it, because my bill was very high, and you have to do something as a small scale miner to offset those costs. So heat capture was my approach there. Since that time, we've heated our home. It's 2,800 square feet with miners for the most part. If it gets into the teens and below, there's some supplemental stuff that has to happen, just because this house is really old and poorly insulated. So the boiler does come on. And then as far as my mining journey goes, my wife was working with a mining conference, and I had a conversation with one of the organizers, and I said, hey, why don't you do something where you interview some small scale miners? I had gone to a mining conference previous to that and told people that I heated my home with miners, and they were really interested in it. And I thought that would be a good panel. You could do it like the Donahue show, or, like one of those Geraldo, one of those old school type shows where you have people up on the panel. Yeah. There might be some baby mama reveals on there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But where you have the audience ask the miners. So I collected up a group of people, and we were going to have a panel there. And then that thing kind of fell apart, and Max had reached out to me, and I told him the story, and he's like, well, why don't we do something? Why don't we do something, for a week or something like that, where we interview these guys and we kind of talk about the small scale pleb miner community. And you'll see this with the show. If you listen to our show, everything has to be a little bit more. It's like sometimes he and I are a great team, and sometimes we're like really bad for each other, because it has to be more. So pleb miner weeks went into pleb miner month, and then we had to give machines away, and then I think we ended up doing like 25 shows or bits, and then we're 10, 15 articles. It was a lot of work. We gave away a lot of stuff. We gave away 6 miners. Some people, no, I think we gave away 12. People were tweeting out like, "Hey, I'll give away a miner too." It's like, okay, yeah, let's join the fun. Stickers, books from Brains, all kinds of stuff. It was a freak show. And then Max and I were like, "Hey, this wasn't enough punishment.
Yeah,
let's do this every month."
Y'all I've listened to a couple episodes. Y'all got good chemistry on that show. Y'all really do make a good team. So
we're friends in real life, so that kind of helps. And then you figure out what your boundaries are, and we don't seem to have very many boundaries. So if we have to insult each other, it just goes there, as long as it's fun.
Yeah. We have to start insulting each other, Ed.
Yeah. I'm not good at that.
I have a question for you, John. So on episode 6, y'all were talking about the Bitcoin conference, and I've heard. So I don't think you went, but you
I was a week late.
Yeah. You were a week late, but I heard mixed reviews on it as well. So was that kind of the theme in the beginning that y'all were talking about there?
Sure. You know, I think as far as the pleb community goes, you're going there just to see other plebs. I actually know a lot of guys that didn't even go into the conference or buy a general admission ticket or anything. They just went and rented a house and partied for 2 or 3 days down there. And you saw the trajectory over the past 3 years or so. Look at the speakers and the sponsors from 3 years ago, and see what kind of shit coinery that they got involved in, or what kind of rug pull they committed on their customers, or the things that they were talking about, the potential of this, for Bitcoin, the potential of that for Bitcoin. And so much of it was outside of sound money principles. It was all this fluff on top of it. So if you just look at the track record of the speakers and the sponsors that they've had at that conference, you saw the direction that was going to go. And so what did they resort to this time that they didn't have a bunch of shitcoin type sponsors that were going to ride the coattails of Bitcoin? They get the 2, wizard goofballs up there Udi just to taunt everybody, essentially with the ordinals thing, and
Hang on, who are the two wizard goofballs?
Udi Wertheimer and oh shit,
I don't know who the other.
I
I don't
forget the
know.
other guy
Yeah.
was.
I
But
haven't. Was there? Remember this, Ed? So their big announcement last year. I don't know if anybody's talked about this actually. Bitcoin Conference's big announcement last year was one of their main sponsors was Shell. You remember that? And then all of a sudden, like that completely
I
disappeared
don't
from.
even remember that.
You don't remember that? Yeah.
Uh-uh.
They made a huge announcement that Shell was going to be a sponsor. And
Oh,
then probably a
yeah.
month later, we talked about it. And then like a month
Yep.
later, like all of it just kind of like went away and disappeared from their website. And I was just curious if Shell was a sponsor
right.
because Shell was developing some of this. I don't know. You may know the proper term, John, but whatever the immersion liquid is that the machines go in, dielectric. I don't know the technical
fluid.
name. Yeah. Yes, but I think Shell was developing some of that, and they were going to be a big sponsor, and we're going to promote it and the whole deal, and that whole thing went away. I don't know what happened to that, but
I think you still can get the Shell fluid. I've heard of immersion guys using the Shell fluid.
It's interesting they kind of distanced themselves.
I bet you it has something to do with DEI initiatives, ESG initiatives, BlackRock telling all of these companies that you can't get corporate loans unless you're checking all of your ESG boxes, and doing anything with Bitcoin would automatically disqualify you.
So I think it may have been Bitcoin Amsterdam, though. I don't know if it was the Bitcoin.
That would make more sense if Shell is a.
But
maybe
the Shell a Dutch.
I mean, I got something wrong on this podcast, Ed.
Where's 30,000?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not be surprised if somebody committed verbally or whatever, committed ahead of time, and it got to somebody at their exec's desk, and they vetoed the idea, and that happens. So, yeah. All right. So what are you drinking? Is it really some local,
is moonshine. My friend Chet, who runs a hydro mine in Kentucky, Mr. CD Brown 3, makes this moonshine in Kentucky style
nice.
at the mine itself. And my daughter, actually, Ellen Prince printed these stickers and did them up nice, but my daughter did the original designs there.
Nice.
So that's Chet's moonshine.
Hell yeah. That's
cool. It is powerful.
How old is your daughter?
The one that did that, she's 11.
Really? The stickers?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
She did that. She's pretty talented with that kind of stuff, and my wife and I will give her work to do for our personal life, and she just does it.
Awesome. That's cool. Well, cool. And so we were looking at hash rate index.
We'll promote the stickers and the moonshine.
There you go.
Well, I've met Chet I met him at a Bitcoin Day conference once, I believe. So I think it was Oklahoma.
Big giant beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Chet.
Yeah.
And I will say just real quick, because I just looked it up. The Bitcoin conference on November 10th, 2022, we're excited to announce Shell as an official Bitcoin 2023 sponsor. May 18th to 20th, Miami Beach.
You're being Steven.
All right. You were right.
So interesting. And then it just went away. But I think John's probably right on that. That's probably why that just kind of disappeared.
Also, if you want to look back at Bitcoin, what happened to Jack Mallers' strikes announcement last year that all these vendors, on the Visa network, I think, or whatever point of sale systems were going to be taking Bitcoin. I was really looking forward to that one.
I was too.
As somebody that needs liquidity sometimes, that's just the way it is. You get super high electricity bills and you need some liquidity. And I thought, well, that's great. Because at the time I was using Byte Refill and having to figure out, okay, tell the wife, well, to use by refill to buy Sam's Club this week. And I thought, well, how easy would that be if we can just use Bitcoin and all these vendors? That was going to be a big thing. And I'd love to hear from Strike what happened with all that.
Well, I do know that I'm a user of Strike, and I was on the waiting list for their credit card. Are you guys? Do you use Strike at all? Like, I get some of my paycheck just into Bitcoin through Strike, but I was on the waiting list for a credit card through them, and I got an email a month ago where it was like, "Hey, we've refocused our efforts, and our North Star is, towards, allowing, countries and remittance and this sort of thing. So we're kind of canceling the credit card." I don't know if maybe, kind of in that same vein, if that has anything to do with it, but I do know these legacy payment rails and payment companies, I mean, what a beast of a effort to kind of overtake them as far as, POS systems and whatever. Now, they are integrated with Shopify. I do know that.
Okay.
I don't have a Shopify store, but so I couldn't tell you, but I do know
one of the guys in our group, Zach Baumsta, had just set up a Shopify thing, store to sell his boards, his Njord boards that go with Bitmain products. He just set up a Shopify thing, and I think he had some difficulty with it.
Really?
So I don't know how straightforward that is as a payment processing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a Fold user anymore, but they were, for a long time, they were promising a credit card as well, and then nothing ever came of it, as far as I know. I don't know if after I left, if they released it.
Speak well of the Bitcoin company for the Bitcoin credit card.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Well, I had a BlockFi credit card, and I was out picking up some pizza one evening, and that was the only card I had on me, and it would not go through. And I was like, what the hell? I know I have a lot of money on this thing. And then I get back and I look at my computer and got an email that was like, basically the end of the world. We're going bankrupt. We've stopped all transaction on everybody's credit cards, and you have to log in to this company. It was one of those things. So yeah,
that makes it that kind of track history, and I know, like, TFTC, I don't think they ever advertised for BlockFi, but they had the BlockFi guy on. Was it Zach Prince? Is that who the guy from BlockFi was?
Yep.
And I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, I listen to TFTC, and he was on there, and so that must be all good. I'm going to seek them out." It makes it very difficult as a content creator. These stupid buzzwords, but you guys have a pod. We've got a pod. You have to be very choosy about your sponsors.
100%.
It's like we were fortunate with Pleb Miner Month that we'd worked with all the people that are our current sponsors now, and it's all related to mining. It's like you're never going to have an advertiser or a sponsor on Pleb Miner Monthly that isn't anything to do with mining, and somebody that we don't know, or a product that we don't use. We're just not going to have it, just because you're really walking on eggshells, and with who the sponsors are.
Yeah.
How long between when you started your podcast to when you got your first sponsors? Your sponsors.
We got our sponsors before we started Pleb Miner Monthly. And it was easy. Really, it was kind of like a phone call to Peach. We reached out to Peach and said, "Hey, you guys want to sponsor the pod?" And they were like, yeah, we were thinking about doing something like that. You guys seem good enough. But, we knew that we were friends with them before, and Alex, it's just good to stick with your buddies. With Mehdi Nasseri from Linkcoin, we just had a great relationship from get-go. We interviewed him once we found out that they did pay-in payouts out of their pool, and we're like, "Hey, you want to come on?" He's like, "Sure." We came on. We had a great conversation. I started using Linkcoin right from there. and called him up and said, "Hey, would you like to sponsor the pod?" And he's like, "Sure." It was that easy. Excuse me. Fix rigs. Well, that just makes sense to have a sponsor like that. This shit breaks. They fix shit. It's it doesn't get any easier than that. And he had reached out during Pleb Minor Month just to say, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. That's cool. If we can help out in any way, let us know." So I feel like if somebody ever approached us with a big paycheck, Max and I'd be like, I don't think so. No, I'll pass on that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I was just going to say I sought out BlockFi because I listened to I'm a fan of the Pomp Show and Anthony Pompolano. That's how I sought out BlockFi.
LinkedIn,
but now I don't know if you listen to him. Yeah, right. But he doesn't do any advertising anymore. To your point, John.
I heard
He's
that.
like,
yeah.
I'm not advertising anybody because my brands.
Well, like I guess when you've rug pulled people so many times that you're like, you don't have enough rug left.
Well, now would be a good time to shout out Alana and her support of our podcast. So we Dirty Coin is coming up in hopefully a couple months. She'll have it out, and thanks for your support, Alana and Dirty Coin. So go check them out.
I actually just donated to her Guys Are Fun today.
Sweet.
After I was listened to the pod that you guys had on. Awesome. And she interviewed a couple people that I know. She interviewed my buddy Bert in the Netherlands, Bert de Groot. So I'm looking forward to that interview. There's quite a few of them that I'm looking forward to. But I noticed on that interview that did with her, what is that guy named? Alex de Vries from the Netherlands. He's like a World Bank anti-Bitcoin type FUD guy. And she said, "Oh, I talked to him for like 2 hours, and he went somewhere and then came back, and I talked to him again." I'm interested to see what that piece of shit has to say about Bitcoin, because his whole existence is to be a World Bank stooge and shit on Bitcoin. So I'd like to know how I just want to hear what he had to say. But I'm also looking forward to hearing all the different miners. Just put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of opposing opinions. So yeah, it's all good. We'll see what he says, and laugh at him or whatever. So
opposing opinions are good. Hang on one second. Let me ask John a question. What do you think the biggest threat to Bitcoin is, or what is the best argument against Bitcoin that you've heard? It may still be a bad argument, but
it's the most difficult question I've ever been asked.
What is Bitcoin's biggest threat? That's probably an easier one.
To me, scalability and ease of use are the biggest threats. I've been trying to orange pill people for a long time, and I used to do it with Moon because that was quick and easy, and you could show them how fast it went because they do this like submarine swap thing. It's not exactly on chain. They can see it pretty quickly coming into their Moon wallet. Oh, okay. Well, here it is. You explain, well, it's not really there on your phone. It's just quick opportunity to orange pill vendors. And now with the recent transaction fees, I haven't even looked up transaction fees lately, if they're still high. Let me just take a look real quick. Transaction fees as a percentage of block reward. They're not as high as they were. They're not as high as that big spike in the early May, but still, I wanted to do something today. Oh, it was donating to Dirty Coin's Geyser Fund, and it was like 87 sats per VByte. So I just think it's the payment processing thing, and I'm not sure that Lightning is ready for prime time. And I know a lot of people say that. And a layer 2 solution. By the way, that's not my my expertise whatsoever. But I just think that scalability. If there's a bunch of people trying to transact in Bitcoin and they want some kind of proof on chain that transaction actually happened, and they can't get that, people are very visceral. And they're going to think that they're being rug pulled, even though they would go to Western Union or go to a bank and do an ACH transfer, and it's going to take a whole day. They trust the institution of banking for some reason. So that's what I think the holdbacks are.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Did you contribute to Dirty Coin on chain then? Like, was there a Lightning option?
Yeah, there is a Lightning option. Yeah, but I don't have anything because I keep waiting for some kind of low fee day to reload my I use custodial Lightning.
Got it.
Just because it's like another job. I have many nodes. But it's like another job, communicate with people, setting up Lightning channels. So I use custodial Lightning.
Yeah,
I'm not ashamed.
Can you? I didn't look it up because I wanted to have you explain it to us. But as far as like hash rate,
is that the link? Is that the LinkedIn of the Lightning node, John?
I'm going to follow you on LinkedIn. We're going to communicate often on LinkedIn. Let's make this work.
Yes.
So, what is for Lincoin? What is their? You were talking about lenses on your last podcast.
Oh yeah, that's what we use. It's lens.lincoin.com.
Okay. And how does besides the pool itself? I mean, I don't use anything from Luxor for a pool yet. But like, how does the lens differ from hash rate index? Have you dabbled in both?
They're all pretty similar.
Okay, all right.
Lincoin's a sponsor, so
yeah,
I use Lens.
Yeah. No, I had not looked at it because I wanted to talk to you about it and get your opinion on it. So
I like the miner compare tool. It's cool.
Okay. Cool.
Just if you want to geek out on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do. I'll have to check this out. I mean, I've seen they've sponsored a couple newsletters and podcasts that I listen to or read. So I'll have to. Yeah, you're the tipping point then for me, John. I'll have to dig in and kind of.
I'd say that Linkcoin's coming out with all kinds of different tools, and I'm not doing an advertisement on your show. I'm just vouching for people. And that's what I think the important thing in this space, industry, community, whatever word you want to use, is connecting with people. And I like Link. Listen, I like Brains. I like a lot of people. You know, I know some guys that work for Luxor. I like them a lot. But Linkcoin, I really like Mehdi. The guy works hard. It's almost like you can DM him at any time of day and he's going to get back to you. That's a very personal relationship with a mining pool. You're not going to have that with F2 pool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just a big faceless pool.
Yeah.
And so what do you need on a mining pool? Like, hey, my payout didn't go through. Why? Oh, it's because of this. Okay, thank you very much. If you submitted some kind of trouble ticket to F2 pool and say that your payout didn't come in, then are you going to get that kind of personal attention? So like Lens is a cool tool and it's got a good UI and it looks good and stuff. But the reason like I mine mostly with Linkcoin is because I just like them.
Right on.
Good folks.
Yeah.
Did you talk about this huge spike on your podcast?
Yeah, we did.
All right. I couldn't remember if you did or not.
We'll have to do a better job, make it more memorable.
So I don't know if we want to go into any stories because this is not longer than our normal, but it's been fun. So yeah, there was. Do you know Daniel Batten? He's on LinkedIn. He does a lot with the environment and Bitcoin, and he's part of like some green investment fund, but he's also really into Bitcoin. But he was. I don't know if it was him or not. I probably should have double checked before I attribute this to him. But somebody on Twitter was talking about how they thought it was a good thing that Europe was eliminating basically like short hop flights, like basically forcing people to drive instead of fly. And so it kind of relates to this in terms of because
Well,
this
see,
relates to
you're
Europe.
still in my thunder a little bit, Ed, because that
Oh, okay.
is who I was taught. That is so. Several people shared that post on LinkedIn that I'm just like, and people heavy in the mining industry from a from a more of a kind of public level, and I was shocked, and what they're sharing is I'm going to just go to it real quick,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to call her out. I'm not going to call her out by name, but basically she's the founder of Sustainability Stories, and she's talking about how she's 30 minutes into a 21-hour train trip on Amtrak, traveling from Pittsburgh, PA to Greenville, South Carolina. It's a trip that takes 9 hours by car or a little bit less by plane. All right. And then she goes into that. And then she's like, hey, there's two options per day to leave Pittsburgh to go south, one at 5:30, one at 7:30. And, she's talking about how, in the United States, it takes much longer by train than by car, the exact opposite of some other countries, basically. But this is what gets me. She's like, people, all capital, want to take trains. The demand is here, but the service and the capacity is not, and we are wasting so many opportunities to reduce road congestion and air travel and combat climate change by keeping trains out of reach for so many people. I'm
Yeah.
like, who who I don't know anybody that's like, yeah, I want to take a train this weekend. Now, my wife did live in New York for 10 years. I've got friends that live in Boston. Like on the upper East Coast, it is a little different. I've never been to Pittsburgh. I've been to Louisville, which is pretty close. But like, so I do know that trains is more, I would say, like embedded in the culture a little bit more, where you just pop on a train and you're in DC in an hour, or you're in Central Station, and whatever. But like, I don't know. I mean, I've been all over the country. That's the only place I know where people want to take trains, but it's like a hop, skip, and a jump to like a weekend or to go see a friend or family. It's not like, hey, me and my wife and kids want to get on an Amtrak in Jackson, Mississippi and head north and head to Chicago for the weekend. Like, no, never. Not never once has that ever happened.
Participate in some gang violence,
Right,
and then just
right,
hop
right,
on a train, head right back down to Mississippi.
yeah, like, I mean, to say that people want to take trains, and now we're getting into this whole trains are going to save the environment. I mean, whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think
Those kind of things are never presented from an even-keeled perspective. It's like I'm presenting you with the panacea of all travel solutions right here, and it's the train. We have determined so. Why? Well, because I said it's the train, right? We all know that. Do you like Japan? That's a pretty cool place. They've got high-speed bullet trains. Aren't they cool? You're not, America, with your old shitty Amtrak train.
Yeah, and you know what? In Japan, if you leave your phone on the bullet train, you can come back 2 days later and someone's turned it in for you as well. Like it's a whole different culture over there. But yeah,
It's the same thing with the energy markets too, and it's like it's a one size fits all solution. Coal fired power plants, natural gas fired power plants are bad. Everybody knows that. They're terrible. Why do you know it? Because I told you so.
yeah.
And what is good? Solar panels and windmills. Why? Because I told you so. And isn't that good enough for you? Yeah, but my rates are going up. Yes, but don't you understand that this is a better technology? We did a story on the Vogtle nuclear power plant in Georgia, and their reactor 3 came online at Vogtle, and reactor 4 is going to come online soon, or it already came online by now. And I brought up in that story, my best friend worked for Southern Company, and he left there because he was like, this is all politics. This is not engineering. I'm here to be an engineer. I'm not here to be a politician. I want to go to a power company that actually does things. So he went to another co-op power company, and he sent me these statistics that they had just closed down a coal-fired power plant that was in his co-op. Shut down a coal-fired power plant that was similar to the output that Vogtle 3 put out. Now, how long did it take for them to build Vogtle 3 and 4? What kind of investment had to go into that? What do you have to do to create capital in this world? Well, what do? We take the resources out of the ground, or out from somewhere. We make them into something. We put them on the market. That's what creates wealth. So how much wealth creation, i.e. things that had to be dug out of the ground, redistributed into the system, extracted out of the system, and invested into this nuclear power plant when you already had one over here that was coal-fired. Now, why is that better? Let's look at the carbon output of this particular coal-fired power plant versus the nuclear power plant. Well, the nuclear is much better, but how did you get to that point? You're just starting at the end and then examining things from there. So you could do the same thing with this train story. It's like, all right, well, if you happen to have high-speed rail all over the place, that would be great. That would be much better. And if you also had a populace that is easily controlled, and I'm not to insult the Japanese, like I lived in Japan for a year. I have a lot of respect for Japanese culture. They're very dutiful, but that is built into their culture through thousands of years of however they became the culture that they are. That is not ingrained here. Freedom is ingrained here. Doing whatever the fuck I want to is ingrained here. Getting in my car and driving wherever I want to, and then leaving whenever I want to, and not have to worry about somebody's crying baby on a train. That is not ingrained in us. So if we look at the end, okay, sure, trains. That sounds great. That's sort of utopian, isn't it? But how did you get there? What would you have to do to American infrastructure? What would you have to invest in American infrastructure? What would you have to do to the psyche of the American people to say, okay, now we're trained folks, now. And that's what these utopians do. The World Economic Forum types, the greenie weenie types. That's what they do. They're all, cloistered in their think tanks, even if they don't have evil intentions. They're not Masonic, Illuminati, pedos, Satan worshiping elite. Let's just say they are really good folks that just want the best for humanity. Well, they're all pie in the sky utopian idiots then. There are only one of two things: either you're an idiot or you're evil.
But in the meantime, our tax dollars go to keep Amtrak running, and for somebody out there that wants to spend an exorbitant amount of time
for Lunch Bucket Joe to go from Delaware to DC.
Yeah, I did look up. I am interested in doing it as I spent some time in Europe in the past, and so I've been on trains before there. But I do want to do it for my kids. Either I do want to do it in the U.S. and do it in Europe too someday. But I do want to do it in the U.S. But it really is like you're going to spend a couple days traveling just to get where you want to go, to turn around and spend a couple days traveling back, and that's like the trip is the
Edward,
train.
Have you ever looked into like to do these trips? There's one in West Virginia down here where they'll take you up in the mountains on a old steam locomotive during fall when all the leaves are changing, and it's a whole like day trip kind of thing. And I know they have one in Maine.
Okay,
like that might even be a better option than seeking Amtrak. Just doing these.
They've got some excursions that'll take you out west in a horse and carriage too, Ed.
Oregon Trail. You'll die of
dysentery. Hit up on the Oregon Trail. But no, that is, I mean, to me, it all comes down to infrastructure. I mean, I just think of the small town I live in North Louisiana, and my wife, she's from South Louisiana, and there's obviously bigger cities and things like that. But whenever she came here, she was like, "What the fuck is going on? There's no sidewalks on like in any neighborhoods in anywhere." Like I'm like, this isn't the culture where people are out just walking around. I wish. I mean, if we had sidewalks, people would ride bikes more and they would probably walk more in the town I live in. But when you think about it, I think we're a town of around 50,000 and the parish we're in is around 100,000 ish, somewhere around there. But think of the money to put sidewalks in a small, like, I'm not talking about like a one red light town. I'm talking about a decent sized city with 50 to 75,000 people, to put sidewalks in neighborhoods and down roadway. I mean, you're talking shit piles of money that the city doesn't have. So like, what do you do? You know,
Well, you deal with all kinds of, and this is part of my vocation, is dealing with right-of-way issues. If your town wasn't constructed in that way, then everybody's deed says to this point on the road. So now it's a land grab essentially, and you have to negotiate all kinds of right-of-way and eminent domain type things. I mean, we have to do it all the time when we need to put a new pole lead to run some fiber down the road. If we never went that path before, since the inception of a Bell telephone, then we have to get all new kinds of right-of-ways and permits from the Department of Transportation, and we have to have environmental studies because we're disturbing the earth on the side of the road. And people will come up to me and say, "Hey, when are we getting fiber into my neighborhood?" And I said, "Well, if it were up to me, we could probably run it in a week, but it's not."
Yeah.
So maybe a year, maybe another year. I don't know. And I have to imagine in all infrastructure projects, sidewalks, bike lanes, trains, you're going to deal with the same things.
Yeah.
Unless you want to have some kind of top-down control. And I think that's what really irks the Klaus Schwabs of the world. The utopianists of the world. Like, I can just make everything the way that it should be. I can have the appropriate amount of population in the world if they would just listen to me and let me tweak all of these dials.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, we so the next story is actually about regulation, and so last week we talked about the Texas mining bill, and then we talked about the 30% mining tax, and so I named the episode "The Death of Regulation," and so then like the next day they come out with the House or whoever comes out with their new proposed legislation regarding, and it's short on details, but I'm curious. The only thing I really want to talk about here is like the difference between the executive, what they were trying to do with the 30% mining tax, the DAME, and then versus, could potentially, if the legislation does something, could it maybe appease some of that, burning desire to regulate on the executive side potentially? And I don't know the answer, but we'll see if this goes anywhere or not. But let's see here. So yeah, there was a draft. I can't even remember if the draft was available. When I looked, I think it was all like just placeholders, and so we'll see what they actually come out with. But it seems to be answering a lot of what the hearings have been about recently, or it seems to be a response to a lot of like the FTX stuff and a lot of the hearings that have been happening recently. So that's all. I didn't know if anybody else had any thoughts on this or had looked into it any further.
I didn't see that come out. Usually kind of have my ear to the ground for that kind of thing. What are they, just recommendations from the House Financial Services Committee and Ag Committee chairs?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see why or how those two. I think it's because the parties involved are. It's the commodities. It was the CFTC and the SEC. Yeah, here we go. the SEC and the CFTC would basically take co-responsibility for managing this. So I don't know if that's why ag is involved at all. So, yeah.
I'll have to look into that. But the things that I fear the most are mining taxes.
Yeah.
So Dennis Porter gets a lot of shit, doesn't he? And I'm amongst them. You know, I've made fun of him before, but I think, you know, everybody's got a place. So he was very active with Pierre Rochard in Texas to get the Texas committee to what did they end up doing in Texas? I stopped following that story, but that got dropped.
Yeah, I got dropped.
Okay.
He answered me actually on LinkedIn and told me what the answer is. So I'll have to pull it up here real quick. Keep going.
I did do an update on it, but then I forgot it. On because we have another segment called Action News where we kind of try to keep track of stories like that. Arkansas was good news. There was something to protect mining in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then my last pleb miner in the wild, excuse me for a second. My last pleb miner in the wild, Jason Vaughn, had a personal story in Montana where the local town council said, no, you can't mine. And recently the state just passed something protecting mining. So those are all very, you know, those embolden you and make you feel good about the future of mining, and the state threat isn't so imminent. But then when you have the executive branch wanting to do its own thing, and now you have part of the legislative branch wanting to do their own thing through committee fiat rule, it just slaps you right back to reality and say, well, you're never safe.
Mm-hmm.
Own your own stuff.
Dennis said it did not make it out of committee. That's what he said.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, Stephen, I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of this, that article or any of the legislation that they've talked about. It's still, again, low on details, but I just thought we'd just talk about the fact that, you know, even the SEC and CFTC, it makes sense, but, you know, how are they going to, what's that partnership look like, right? And what are, you know, I'm sure it'll generally, my perspective would be it's not going to be good. That's generally a safe assumption.
Yeah.
But it's at least it's not the 30% tax, hopefully. So.
Yeah. I think Bitcoin's been insulated a little bit because I think it, you know, the government looks at it more of a commodity and not a security like these other coins. But it's insulated from that. I think it's best that it is considered a commodity, but still, you still have choke points, whether it's on the payment side of it, you know, the finance side of it, where, you know, they can put regulations on banks, and they're not, you know, giving any more banking charters as well. And then obviously the miners too, you can tax the shit out of them. You know, once they start taxing the shit out of miners coming in from China, which I've said that, to me, I feel like that is probably, to me, that's one of the biggest threats to Bitcoin, is just all these machines are not made in America, which of course, how could they be, with, you know, just the state of, you know, manufacturing and made in America goods. But I mean, I don't think it would be that hard for the government to put a choke point on imports for miners. Like, I mean, because if you talk to miners in other countries, take like Argentina, for example, that's why they don't mine over there, is because the import taxes are so high. It just, the economics of it don't make sense. So I think there is a scenario where the government, just the economics, you know, the economics don't make sense. Now, I do think, though, that there is a lot of institutional money in Bitcoin, which I'd be, you know, probably from, you know, probably from the pleb miner. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, John, but I would imagine in the beginning it was kind of like, hey, this is our shit. Like, let us do this. We don't want this. But I would have to say that institutional money probably protects Bitcoin somewhat from government like regulation coming in. And even look, I mean, the marathons of the world and the riots of the world are, eventually they could be the most valuable companies in the world over the next 10 to 20 years, more valuable than Google, more valuable than Nvidia, more valuable than any of them if they're sitting on, a stockpile of the world's, most valuable commodity. So I don't know. It's, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to sit back and watch how this plays out, but it's just going to be a push pull, adversarial relationship. And it's interesting because we talked about it in the beginning about like the RFK Juniors. I can go down the list, the Ted Cruzes, like all of them. I look at, I'm like, ugh, like y'all, on one hand, like, fuck, man, like you're just another politician, but you know, you are pro Bitcoin, so that or are you really pro Bitcoin? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
There could, you could probably convince me that they're not too, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I'm going to go off camera for a minute. You guys keep talking. John, who
Sure.
was the 3 nanometer and 5 nanometer chip manufacturer you guys were talking about on your show?
That was it. That was Intel.
Mm-hmm.
Had produced 5 nanometer chips as part of their block scale project. And there was a company in Mark Yusko had backed a company in Israel that was also producing 5 nanometer chips. And it seems as though they had got a jump start on them, and Intel decided, okay, well, we're kind of going to go out of the game here. Yeah. But what happened with that is Block, Jack Dorsey's open source mining toolkit, got a hold of a lot of the 5 nanometer chips. So that enabled them to say, okay, well, we're going to, in our open source development toolkit, now we have all these 5 nanometer chips, and we have the masks, like the process for producing the 5 nanometer chips. Now we can move on to doing research into 3 nanometer chips. So that enabled them to get a jump start on their 3 nanometer chip manufacturing.
Cool.
So that there is hope there that this choke point of South Korea and Taiwan chip manufacturing.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about Block doing some stuff, and I you may see, whether it's Elon or whoever, maybe he, who knows? There may be some. You're right about that, John. I forgot about Block.
Hey,
the jury's out for me.
Stephen, though, it's like, you remember, COVID times and the chip manufacturing, and the Biden administration has gotten some money for a foundry in Arizona. Do you guys remember this story?
No,
I don't.
Not any details about it, but I remember there was something like there used to be a foundry in Arizona, and they said, okay, well, we're put all kinds of money into producing another foundry, and then like, well, it actually takes like 15, 20 years to spin up a foundry, and it's extremely dirty, and maybe it's probably best to let the South Koreans and the Taiwanese handle this kind of thing. But can you imagine if they got like floor space at this foundry, and they said, well, it's actually a matter of national security, we don't want to produce ASIC chips, so we're making it illegal. And then you've done all this R&D into producing an American ASIC chip, and that is really, the other things about building a miner are not complicated whatsoever. Aluminum chassis, a control board that's extremely simple, some fans, you could produce all that stuff here right now if you wanted to. It's the ASIC chip. You say, okay, well, you put all this R&D into producing these boards and ASIC chips, and now it's a matter of national security. We need to make more important things, missile guidance system chips.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one last, and then so the final story I had pulled up was in regards to, and this actually comes from hash rate index. But the highlight of the story that I thought was interesting or worth discussing in regards to capitalization of Bitcoin miners, and not even like the public, I think, is one sphere, like that's one pool of how they operate and what they have access to. But I think the non-public but non-plebs, like the middle layer, I guess, with the private larger miners, getting capital, right? Do you have any, I guess, John, from your perspective, right? Like, how is there any way to build confidence or build trust in that, or will it always be just, we don't get Bitcoin, so we're not going to fund you, or we're going to do it at exorbitant interest rates, right? Do you ever see that changing at some point?
Yeah, I don't have any insight on those kind of things. The people that I know that have larger mines, larger at least on the small scale sense, they were people that made their money somewhere else.
Yeah.
In different industries, and they just happen to love Bitcoin, and they like mining, and they want to get into it. So it would be like kind of mid-level rich folks that love Bitcoin but might not be able to build a mine themselves.
Is your sole mining taking place at your house still, or are you mining anywhere else?
At my house and another location.
Okay.
But in that, you always have to be flexible as a small scale miner, because if you don't have a long-term agreement with the power company, or I mean, you guys are into real estate, securing these kind of things, that's your biggest rug pull. I was chatting with a guy the other day on Twitter in DMs. He's like, I had everything lined up, soup to nuts. I had machines lined up. I had real estate lined up. I had power pricing lined up. Power company told me, hey, these are going to be the details of it. Okay, cool. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to build out this facility. We'll order racks, rack space, cabling, all kinds of stuff. Engineers get back to him, or the billing department gets back from the power company. It turns out we're not going to offer you that rate. And he's sitting there holding the bag. As far as institutions getting institutional money, I think a lot of those big guys are all in the same place. It's like when you watch hash rate come online and go offline like that, here's all these transaction fees, and now you can do make all kinds of money doing out of band stuff. So let's spin up some more hash rate. And I always think to myself, well, where were these machines sitting?
Yeah.
Where was all this infrastructure? Is this the state doing this? Is this a large institutional miner that had space and had these machines, in low power mode or off, and they just spin it right back up? Like, how are all these industrial guys able to get money at the snap of a finger and get hash rate? I don't get it. It's like, that's a huge disconnect with me. I just have a hard time understanding it. So from a small scale perspective, I think you have to go back to the relationship thing again. How well do people trust you? What is your reputation? What is your proof of work? Yes, I've built a mine before. Okay, let's do it again. Like, I keep talking about my buddy Chet because of all this moonshine I'm drinking, but he has a very specific skill set, to build a hydro mine and to do on-site maintenance and repair and troubleshooting and pool maintenance and keeping track of all these metrics for your efficiency of machines and how much you're getting charged at what time of day. These are very important skill sets within the mining industry. So I think if he ever got a business proposal together and went up to some person that wants to invest it, not because it's the best investment decision to make, I think you could probably do better with your money somewhere else than in mining, but because you love it, that he could go to them with a business prop and say, I've done this before and I can do it again for you. But you have to have the proof of work, and you have to have the reputation. I think then, on a small scale basis, that's what you have to be. For these larger scale people, they just seem to be able to get money. There's just money to be had. Well, they printed all this money. They're at the discount window. These banks get all this money from the Fed, and they say, well, you have to lend it out, Bank of America. Okay. Bank of America lends it out. Hey, we get a business proposal. All right, great. Now we get rid of all this money. Hope you pay it back. So I that's a part that's just, I don't understand it at all. You know, how these large institutional people get money and then they fail and then they liquidate their machines and then they reorganize, and it's like the same people got it again, and they're all going right back at it.
Somebody just announced, Stephen, do you remember? I was trying to pull it up. Somebody just announced a bunch of mining going into Texas. There are a few hundred megawatts, I believe it was, but I'll have to keep looking for it.
Clean Spark.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was cleaned. I think it was Clean Spark. Yeah, I mean, I honestly on the article you have pulled up, I still really don't understand the mechanics of hedging,
Hedging.
Yeah, hedging on derivatives. Like, I don't know. It just, that sentence sounds risky. So I don't know. I mean, mining in itself is pretty straightforward. You find the cheapest energy source, and there's cost of doing business, cost of your machines, and you've got some other ancillary costs there. But I think once you, kind of to your point, John, once you start to complicate things with loans and derivatives and all this stuff, man, unless you're one of the big boys, I don't know. You better be real fucking smart, and you better be a good gambler.
Well, I think
Bitcoin better not stay sideways for the next 9 months either. So
I think the goal is just that if you're going to take out if you're of the size or scale where you're taking out, loans to buy more machines, and that if there's concern that if the bank has concern about their investment, right, and that's why they're loaning to you at a higher rate than normal or average for the energy industry, that to give them some sense of comfort, you say, all right, well, I'm going to take a short position as well, because if something goes south, if Bitcoin price goes south or whatever, I'll be able to pay you back still because I have downside protection. I think that's kind of the idea of the derivatives and the hedging piece, but I could be wrong about that. But that was my take on, or that's what I've seen to be a common protection strategy. So
I never feel bad when I see a large miner go out of business. Because what's there to feel bad? I mean, they probably only have 15 employees. Really, the mining operations don't take that much in employees. Once you get everything built, they just kind of run. This one's bad. All right, let me take it down. Let me ship it off or fix it. So of course that sucks for the employees to lose their job. But as far as the leadership apparatus of the mine, they're not on the hook. They're not going to jail for not doing a good job. They're not going to lose their house or anything. They'll move on to some other position. But when a small scale miner fails, well, in all likelihood, they put their heart and soul into that. They may have taken money out of their 401k, or they may have had a good stack of Bitcoin for a long time. And they said, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on a larger operation. And when they fail, that's a shitty story. That's a sad story. That's something that, we can all have empathy towards and relate with, because you're a small business owner. It's the same as opening up a pizza shop and putting all your heart into that pizza shop. And this is a analogy that me and my buddy Bitcoin Baseload had come up with. He was at the Nashville Energy Conference, and if I don't know if either one of you know Baseload, but he's very matter of fact about everything. And he's like, all these guys, if they ran a pizza shop, that pizza shop would be out of business in a month. You just get the most expensive ovens. You get the most expensive prosciutto put on the pizza. You get the most expensive imported mozzarella to put on the pizza. They'd be out of business in a week. That's the way a lot of these institutional guys, they didn't even find out how much the dough was going to cost before they started making pizzas. But you're damn sure an actual pizza parlor, Luigi's Pizza Parlor, he knows the price of every slice of pepperoni going on to that pizza. And that's what small scale miners are. They know the ingredients that go on the pizza, and you have to. Otherwise, you're going to be out of business in a week.
Yep.
So I feel bad for the small scale miners that get rug pulled and don't make it. And a lot of us are getting rug pulled right now because energy prices are going up. That's just the way it is. But for the institutional guys, hey, well, I'm sorry that you wanted to put prosciutto on your pizza instead of pepperoni.
That's interesting. I mean, it's basically like if Target went out of business tomorrow, like I would not be sad at all, right? And so I guess same applies to my own industry as well. So
where would you get your kids clothes that they could tuck?
Yes. Yep. All right. Let's so final question, John, for you. So you're only our second guest, but we ask all our guests, what is a miner? That is the question. How would you define a miner?
If you'd bear with me, I had released a pod called Pleb Miner Redux, where I described what my opinion of a pleb miner is, and whatever anybody else thinks is a miner or what is a pleb miner, that's up to you. So I don't speak for the pleb miner community. I don't speak for anybody else but myself. So here's my definition. And it's longer than this. I'll just read the end. Everyone has their own definition of a Bitcoin pleb. It's not defined by the amount of time you've been in Bitcoin, the number of sats in your stack, or how many followers you have on Twitter. The same can be said of a pleb miner. Pleb miner is not defined by your total hash rate, how many watts are required to run your operations, or the complexity of your setup. The title is not something that someone bestows upon you or issues you a rite of passage. So then the ultimate question begs for an answer. Who and what is a pleb miner? A pleb miner is simply a Bitcoin pleb who mines Bitcoin. A pleb miner is dedicated to the Bitcoin network, contributing their hash not only for the chance at finding the next block and receiving the block subsidy and transaction fees, or helping his pool find the next block for a share of the reward, but hashing because they know in their hearts that securing this network is a moral imperative. They mine because Bitcoin is a chance for humanity to restore sovereignty to the individual, to the family. They heed the clarion call that sound money leads to freedom. They mine knowing that for Bitcoin to be decentralized, they must be the ones to do it. Their motivations aren't to gain more fiat currency. Their motivations are to stack more sats. And in doing so, they innovate, collaborate with other plebs, and share their mistakes as well as their triumphs. They spend time on chats offering advice to the new pleb miners as well as learning even from the newest in our ranks. They make guides, videos, and how-tos. They share pictures of their setups not only to share in their innovation and to be critiqued, but because they are proud of their work, as they should be. Proof of work is not just a motto for the pleb miner, it's a way of life. Pleb miners come from all backgrounds, locales, and experiences. They bring various skill sets and craft. To be a successful pleb miner, you quickly learn many trades. Mining encompasses several science and mathematical concepts, basic physics, electricity, thermodynamics, acoustics, and cryptography. Pleb miners quickly become proficient, if not master skilled trades: electrician, IT, telecom, HVAC, plumbing, welding, carpentry, and more. The pleb miner knows that mining is much more than plugging in machines. The pleb miner, the stalwart that defends the network, the unsung anti-heroes of Bitcoin. No influencers, no think boys, only plebs plugging in machines and hashing. So that's my definition of a pleb miner.
That was great. Clip that, Ed.
All right. Well, that was a great ending. Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you, John?
The Bit by Bit pod at Bit by Bit. So on your whatever podcasting app you use, we recommend Fountain. And if you go on there and give us boosts, we'll read your boosts and interact with you there. Ungovernablemisfits.com. some of my articles and podcasts, and you can see Max's other show and his art and Mr. Crown's art. And my Twitter handle is John P. DiGiacomo, JONPDIGIACOMO.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and everybody have a good night.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Hell yeah.